Shalom, this is Chacham Melech Ben Yaakov of Karaite Insights, and today I'd like to talk about the topic of wife beating. Does the Torah allow a husband to beat his wife? The short answer to that question is yes. The husband, in my opinion, in my understanding of the Torah, is allowed to use methods of discipline against any member of his household, including his children, his slaves, his animals, his wife. In the Torah's conception of the family, the husband is king of his castle and has many tools of discipline to run his family, to run his household. Now, does that mean that violence or wife beating or child beating or animal beating or slave beating is recommended? No, I'm not necessarily saying that at all. What I am saying, though, is it is one of the tools that the husband, as master of his house, has at his disposal to instill and ensure discipline in his house. Okay? Let's get a little bit of background on this. Okay? In the Torah conception, the wife, the children, the manservants, the maidservants, the animals are the possession of the household. And one can think of the household as a kingdom. There is a leader, there is a CEO of the household, and that CEO, that leader of the household, is the husband. Therefore, the husband has essentially acquired, in the Torah conception, these are the acquisitions of the husband. The children are his possession. The slaves, the manservants and the maidservants are his possession. The animals are his possession, and his wife and or wives are his possession. This is clear from the language of the Torah. The husband is called the Baal, or husband, or Adon, master. Those are the two words that are commonly used to refer to husband. Baal literally means owner. Adon literally means master. Okay? In addition, when a husband marries, as we call it, marries a wife, or a husband and wife get married, that's not the language that the Torah uses, as is well known by many people. The language that the Torah uses is that the husband takes, lokeach is the word used in Hebrew, the woman. He takes a woman. Okay, so the husband is the active participant. He is the subject of the verb in marriage, and the woman or wife is the passive participant. She is the object or the receiver of the action in the Torah's conception of marriage. Okay, so many other things to say about this. First of all, we see other laws in the Torah which clearly indicate that the husband can use physical force against his possessions. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't want to say it as possessions. Can use physical force against his acquisitions who are in his household, meaning other human acquisitions. Let me point out also that this does not mean in some way that the husband has or can abuse his children, his wife, his animals, his slaves, his manservants, his maidservants. That's not what we're talking about at all here, okay? We're talking about using the power of physical force at times, when necessary, to as a tool for discipline in his house. Okay, so let's talk about some other laws that are relevant. One of the laws that's relevant, and I'm driving in the car, I don't have Torah and I don't have Tanakh in front of me, and I'm not the type of person who memorizes chapter and verse very well. That's just not the way my memory works. So I'm going to paraphrase laws and not necessarily give chapter and verse, but there are laws in the Torah, or there is a law in the Torah saying that if a man beats his slave, then if he knocks his eye out or damages his eye or damages his tooth, knocks his tooth out, then the slave must go free. Okay? This implies that beating one slave was acceptable as long as it wasn't done to the point to cause some kind of permanent damage to the slave. This is one of the laws that supports the idea that that the man, as master of his house, can beat the other humans in his house when he deems necessary. Okay. Another law that comes to mind is the law regarding the Kohen Gadol, that if the Kohen Gadol finds that his daughter is acting the whore, and that could mean various things. That could mean perhaps actually selling her body for sex, or it could just mean sleeping around his unmarried daughter. Then the law is that he's to take her and burn her to death. It doesn't say bring her to the judges. It doesn't say, have a talk with her or anything along those lines, although the husband may initially try to do that, or the father may initially try to do that. But the law, as stated by the Torah, is that the man should take the Kohen Gadol should take his daughter and burn her to death, because she has disgraced and embarrassed the highest religious and most holy religious office in the nation of Israel. Okay, so these are some laws that relate to the topic at hand. Another thing that I want to say is that when we think about it, we accept the beating. If you look at modern society, which falsely presents itself as some kind of liberal, progressive society, we accept the beating of our children, our wives, even our animals, every single day. Except the beating doesn't take place by the husband who loves his wife, who loves his children, who loves his animals even. It takes place by the government. It is completely acceptable in our sick society to know that if someone so much as says the wrong thing or looks the wrong way at a police officer who is a complete stranger, then that police officer can beat us, throw us in jail, can beat our wives if she looks at him the wrong way or says the wrong thing, can beat our children if they look or say something or do something that is wrong. And so we accept every single day that the government, through its use of strangers, can completely beat our wives, our children, even kill our animals at the whim of the police officer. So this is insanity. And if we analyze this more closely, what we see is that in this so-called modern land of the free and home of the brave, the so-called land of the free, what we really have is a dictatorship, a tyranny, a police state disguised as a liberal democracy. This is a complete lie. The United States is not, maybe it once was, it's not a democracy. It is a violent police dictatorship. And so before anyone goes and says, well, this is crazy, this is insanity, how can we allow a husband to beat a wife, to beat children, to beat slaves? We accept this every single day, except not by the loving husband who has his family's best interests in mind 99.9% of the time, who loves his children, who loves his servants, and who loves his animals. We accept it by complete strangers, a lot of them violent psychopaths, sadistic, violent psychopaths. We accept this every single day, and we don't think twice about it. So this is some of the message that I want to get across. Another point is that, let's say that the husband is actually, or the father, the husband, the head of the household, the man, is actually abusive. Let's say he happens to be a sadistic, abusive human being. What recourse does a wife or do children have to such a person? Well, I would say that most normal people, most normal men, at least not in this sick society, but in healthy societies, love their wives, love their children, love all the possessions in their households. And I'll come up with, you know what, before I forget it, let me state another law, okay? There's another law which is that a Hebrew servant may be kept for 6 full years, and then must be released at the beginning of the 7th year. And that if he came in with his wife and children, he leaves with his wife and children. They don't stay with the master after the 7th year arrives. If his master had given him a wife, and the Hebrew servant had children with this wife, then at the end of the 7 years, the wife and the children stay with the master, and the husband leaves alone. However, the Hebrew servant at that point can say, I don't want to go. I love my master, I love my wife, and I love my children. I want to stay, and I want to decide to be a servant to my master for my entire life. And then there's a ceremony that ensues whereby an awl or a spear is put through his earlobe into a doorpost, and that symbolizes that the Hebrew slave is now his master's slave, Eved, for life. Well, how can a slave say, I love my master, right? It doesn't just say, I love my wife and my children. It says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, okay? Because the idea of a master-slave relationship in ancient times was that the master is not just a brutal, sadistic person taking advantage of his servants. No, the servants come under the protection and come under the household of the master, just like subjects would come under the protection of a king, or just like citizens would come under the protection of a government. Okay, so just as citizens could have loyalty to their government, just as subjects could have loyalty and even love their king. And I've been in countries where I've actually seen that with my own eyes, where subjects, for instance, in Morocco, not everybody, but many Moroccans that really absolutely love their king. They feel that he does a good job for the country and does a good job for the people. And some were very much against him, but many that I met were not. And so likewise, a servant could love his master, can love the situation that he's in, the household that he's in, loves his wife, loves his children, and wants to stay forever. Okay? And yet it's explicit that a master has the right to use physical force to beat his slave when and if he deems necessary. Okay, so the insanity that we've accepted in this modern society is that the head of the household can never ever use physical force. In fact, if the husband even so much as raises a finger to his wife, the wife can go call the police and have the husband arrested. This is as is always the case, as we've seen again and again, as I've spoken about in many videos, this is what happens in modern rebellious societies that do not accept the rule of Yehovah, that do not accept the ways of Yehovah, do not accept the Torah. They try to blur the distinctions between roles, between men and women, between parents and children, and they try to create chaos out of order, or they try to instill their own anti-Yehovah order. So, getting back to what I was saying before, what if the husband is actually abusive? What can a wife do? What can children do? Well, the fact of the matter is that that in ancient Israel, most certainly, nobody lived in a vacuum. The man was not just a desert dweller out in the middle of nowhere. The man in Israel was very much about community, about family, about extended family, about clan. Okay, so if whatever the husband is doing, he's doing it within the context of the entire community, within the context of the entire clan, tribe, nation. And certainly the wife or the children, if they feel that they're not being treated fairly, can go to those who are above the husband, such as the judges, the local judges in the gate of the city where he lives, the city near where he lives, or even the higher judges in Jerusalem, what eventually became the place where the God chose to rest his name, his dwelling place. He can go to the highest judge, and he can certainly, or the wife or the children can certainly take their grievance to the judges, and then the judges can rule over the man and enact appropriate punishment. But of course, this would be a last case resort, or this would be in a case where the man really is outright sadistic and abusive to his wife and children. It wouldn't be a regular case where the man has great leeway to decide how to run his family and how to use different types of discipline, including physical discipline, against the members of his household. Okay. Another thing to point out is I just forgot what I was going to say. That happens to me sometimes when I do these videos. Okay, well, this is the topic that I mainly wanted to speak about, and I guess since I forgot the other thing that I wanted to say, that unless I remember it, then I'll just close the video here. But let's sum up. To sum up, in the Torah's conception of the man is that he is head of his household with, I would say, constitutional monarchy over the members of his household. He cannot be wanton in his use of various forms of discipline, but he certainly has the right to use various forms of discipline, including physical discipline, against all of the members of his household, his wife or wives, children, servants, and animals when he sees fit. The second thing to point out is that all of the members of his household in the Torah conception are considered the possessions, and that does not mean that they're objects to be abused, but the human possessions of the husband, of the head of the household, and therefore they are under his rule, just as we as citizens of whatever country we happen to be citizens of are under the rule of our government, who in the modern conception, in the modern so-called, free, so-called liberal societies, we accept every single day that strangers can come beat us for almost no reason, beat our wives, beat our children, beat and even kill our animals and throw us into cages and abuse us for months, years, even decades, almost pretty much at their whim. So what has happened is that the power has been taken away from the husband, from the individual, and has been given to the police state, to the tyranny, and nobody blinks an eye about it in this day and age. So I'll continue this topic another time. I hope this has been informative, and please feel free to pass this video around. Please feel free to comment on it, and I will see you again soon. This has been Chacham Melech Ben Yaakov of Karaite Insights, wishing you a great day.